The two Amazon procurement women are back. We are slacking a little bit, recording Tuesday night for a Wednesday morning release. We try to be a little bit more on the ball than this, but the holiday weekend was not so much a holiday weekend for us, and here we are. So, Dr. E, you are picking the topic today. What do you want to chat about?
Okay, so this will by far be our most controversial topic to date. And again, everything that follows is not political. It's not meant to be political. We're not going to get into politics. And again, I will direct you to my previous statements on politics about the Johnny Cash song. The one on the left is on the right, or whatever that is. I forgot. So, Sarah,
Yes.
today, I want to ask you, what would you think if you and I started a consulting firm, a procurement consulting firm, and we went to a big company? I could be any Fortune 500 company, and our value proposition is that we have some AI and maybe a chatbot or an agent or whatever. We have this AI that would go in and interrogate all the contracts, look at overlapping contracts, uncover trends that are within the where we're spending money, and that we would bring everybody together to talk about where we're spending our money and figure out how we optimize that spend, deciding or looking at compliance. Are we in compliance with our contracts? Are we over reliant on contractors? Are we using contractors? And ultimately, then we like that sounds pretty good, right? I mean, that so far so good, right?
If you came to me with that, I would say, sounds too good to be true. But if we can run a trial, I'd love to try that against some of our more historical data and shoot, let's try. And if even if it's, 75% accurate, pretty incredible and could automate quite a bit of work for the firm.
Right. And so all you need to do is said proverbial client or pretend client, give us access to your systems, your payment systems, and we'll take our AI software and analyze that. And let's find some, I don't know, waste or opportunities for savings, depending on how you frame that.
Now, if I'm a CIO, my CIO hat is gonna say red flag, cybersecurity.
Sure.
But
Absolutely.
my efficiency optimization hat is, hey, let's try it. This could be incredible.
Right. And I would like to point out that this is quite literally what all of us in procurement have done in our profession, whether we've been in it for, I don't know, 25 years like me, or just folks that are starting out. We look at the entire procure tech space. Almost everybody in the space, including the suite providers, have some version of what I just said. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I would say that's a fair statement.
Okay. So with that preamble, and I'm going to say one other. Well, actually, I'm going to say that is what the uh, the Department of Government Efficiency is doing, or it's one thing of what DOGE is doing. The Department of Government Efficiency, otherwise known as DOGE. That is quite literally what they're doing. What I just read you is from their website and reporting about them. Now, they're taking it a step further and talking about shutting down agencies and firing people. And again, I want to stay away from that. But I just wanted to flag for a moment that, and I was getting caught up in the rhetoric, shall we say. But then I, in a moment, realized when I started hearing AI connected to treasury systems, looking where spend money, where the money's being spent, and contract efficiency and all that. And like my brain just started clicking and saying, wait a minute, that's what we do. That's our job. And, or at least I wanted to draw that parallel connection. and I just sort of, and it's funny, and I'll get your reaction to what I just said, but I actually texted you and on February 6th at 11:13 a.m. I'm quoting what I said. Sarah, I know we don't want to get political, but I can't help but think every time I hear about DOGE and using AI to find where money is being spent, that is quite literally what procurement does! Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. So I'm wondering if we should make that a topic. Now, you were busy that day, and so the day goes by, and then at 5:19, I was on LinkedIn and I saw a friend of the show, Jason Bush. He wrote this very, 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 very long post about DOGE, and I thought, okay, we've got to tackle this on the show. So,
So this will be interesting. I have not read his post, so I'll be curious. Maybe we should have you highlight and summarize. But what I will say is that this speaks to the incredible impact that AI is potentially going to have on the profession of procurement.
undoubtedly,
No
undoubtedly.
matter what industry, no matter what level you are, what position, it is going to have a significant impact in automating more manual tasks, replacing jobs, causing folks to pivot skill sets and potentially take on new, different types of roles, and allow organizations to gather data at an incredible speed and volume and react in a way that they've never been able to before.
Right. And by the way, this is on the biggest stage possible. I think there's let's see, I took notes. I was frantically taking notes. There was just so much but I think it's like 1 billion transactions, and man, maybe that's not that much, but like $1 trillion like goes through the treasury system, something like that. I probably have those numbers wrong, but this is not trivial amounts of data, and to throw AI at it and have it, I don't want to say it does its magic. And, I think there's a lot we're not seeing and we won't see for a while until this. But I think you're right. I mean, what this is saying is that, and by the way, there's a huge spotlight on DOGE. So good or bad, they can't hide this. So like this is procurement in the spotlight, like we've never seen before.
Yeah, and I will expand that to say AI in the spotlight like we've never seen
Yeah.
before.
Yeah,
And I
that's good.
think a lot of folks, especially like my parents' age, my parents are 70, they're retired, they're not actively using AI tools or studying AI, or it's not a part of their daily life, but even they know more about AI because of this initiative. So it's really spreading awareness to the fact that AI is going to significantly impact how businesses operate.
Yeah. All right. So I will just summarize
Yeah.
a little bit of Jason's article. That the title is "DOGE: The Greatest Procurement Transformation Story Ever Told?" ? And I think I'm just going to highlight a couple things because I had the same reaction. He articulated it like what I was thinking in my head as I was texting you earlier in the day. But he says quote, the entire procurement profession is just starting to realize how big a deal this is. For the first time, someone is doing a real deep dive into where our tax dollars go. And then he talks about the usual DC theater where an inspector general drops a damning report and there's feigned outrage. But let's see. The next thing he said is, so for the first time, someone's doing the hard analytical work to figure out how the US government can cut costs by eliminating fraud and waste, managing demand, including unnecessary spending before it happens, looking at optimal service, provision, delivery of procurement and grants, and hopefully fostering real competition to ensure the taxpayers get value from the 6.5 trillion in annual spending. And he summarizes the section by saying, in procurement speak, DOGE is the spend management story of the
Yeah.
century. And like that is a good articulation of what was rattling in my head. I mean, we are front and center.
Yeah, and I would say, um, I think one of the really important themes with this story is the ability to not only provide the data, but provide strategic, actionable insights.
Yeah.
So it's like I log into a system or a big scary dashboard, and it's not really gonna help me if I don't know what to do with the data.
Yeah.
So I feel like the theme here is that it's not only running massive amounts of data at a volume that large teams of people would never be able to do, but it's also categorizing
Yep.
and giving the data back in a way that makes it very actionable. And I think that is the huge like takeaway from the story is the impact of AI, not only on doing the work, but giving the insights to take action.
Right, and I'll read another bit from Jason's article. Uh, uh, all serious cost savings initiatives start with gathering, cleansing,
Yeah.
classifying, enriching, and benchmarking spend, commodity, supplier, and supply chain data, which is what you just said. And then he goes on to say, "This is my world. I've spent my entire adult life, more than 25 years, embedded in procurement and supply chain, blah 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 blah, doing this." And I was like, that's when I read that, I was like, yeah, so have I. Like we're all like having this moment of, oh my, again, I'll just say, like, we're on the big stage now. It's amazing.
Mhm. Um, do we know, and again, I have not done a ton of research on this topic. Do we know specifics or details around what they're using and how they're using it? I'm assuming they're using the XAI platform, which is
Exciting.
Elon's platform.
Yep. So yes, so here's what I know, and I'm not an expert. I don't do public procurement. So what I do know is they're using XAI, which is Elon's AI company. There is the General Services Administration, which manages a lot of sort of federal buildings, IT infrastructure, and professional supplies. They created a GSAI. They call it a chatbot. I suspect it's probably more in the realms of an agent and much more intelligent, but whatever it is. So that's one thing they're using. Uh, there are some contract analysis elements. I suspect that's different, not a different sort of AI that they're bringing into that to, and again, like this should sound familiar. This is quite literally what we have all been doing for a long time.
Mhm. Do we know, um, how the team is being comprised? Like, I'm wondering how it resembles how we will potentially be building out procurement orgs in the future. That's why I'm asking.
Well, the team, I don't know. Of course, if you if you read the news, you can't get past the fact that there are, what was it, 5 or 6 of these like teenagers
Yeah,
or young adults.
or
I have
early young 20-year-olds, right?
Yeah, I haven't been following that. However, and this gets to a point you were just making, if 5 untrained folks can just come in with powerful AI and really good skills, which these 5 do, I mean, if they can just replicate and actually do what procurement has been doing, like this gets to the point that you really don't need to be a procurement person
Yeah.
anymore. You just need to understand the AI. And
Yeah,
uh,
it almost makes me think for procurement orgs in the future, will procurement practitioners even be hired?
yeah,
Or is this gonna
yeah,
completely shift where procurement experience almost becomes irrelevant unless you're doing, high level strategic category management, for example, and you hire, young kids right out of college or kids in college who are really good with AI and say, implement this project or get me this data or, tell me what to go run this information and provide us with the strategic insight. So to me, my head goes, wow, the world of a procurement department is going to be completely uprooted and is going to look so different, even potentially this year. I mean, I think we're going to
I,
start seeing changes immediately.
I think that's an amazing point, and like we often we have become acculturated to the idea that technology it has this big bang, and everybody's like wow 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 wow, wow. And then it like simmers down or it fades off, and then nothing changes. But I think this is proof positive that, to your point, you don't really need procurement experience anymore. So much of that procurement experience just is embedded in AI, and I think we'll see a big portion of that and a push in 2025, and by 2026, I suspect the procurement employment landscape. I don't mean number of jobs. I just mean who's doing what types of jobs. I think it will fundamentally change next year, and we're in the process. I've had many discussions recently about BPO activities, and I really don't think the BPO is gonna but BPO is by far the easiest of easy to eliminate. But I think this is going to roll up through category management, uh, sourcing, and even the more quote unquote strategic activities. I think this is going to be a sledgehammer in ways that I don't think we can quite predict yet.
And do we think under this new model, let's say the traditional procurement department or reporting structure blows up and it looks very different. Do we think this will be reporting primarily under a finance or CFO type structure, or do we see that completely changing as well?
Well, I think it depends because there is this element of, I mean, everything we're talking about that DOGE is doing and procurement has done for 25 years or 30 years is stuff, it's just good management practices. Like we spend a lot of time on optimizing sales forces, not the tool, but the sales forces and how we go to market and sell more of whatever it is we're selling. And on the other hand, we have largely ignored where we spend the money to make the companies more profitable. Now, that's not true of all companies. Some companies, especially those in Europe, do a really good job of controlling costs, and some mature companies here in the US do. But you can find quite a few companies that have neglected how they manage and spend money with third parties. So very much in that vein, all of that those activities will become automated, and I believe they'll become extensions of the CFO office. Now, I do think there is a whole other discipline, as I argue vociferously for those that have followed me for any length of time. We also have to start looking at third party management, whether it's risk management or just engaging with third parties and how we do that, especially in this day and age where big suppliers are competitors and also customers, and there's this triangle of that. So of the balance of trade. So I think there is work to be done that is very strategic with regard to third parties, but we can't do that if we're managing inane categories, running sourcing events, chasing tail spend, doing God knows what. So I think there is a little bit of a hybridization that's going to happen in there.
Have you seen in all the work that you're doing at Kearney, have you seen organizations really pivot to AI yet? Now, I'm saying yet because it's only mid-February, right? We're 6 weeks into the new year, but I still, through all my contacts and friends who are procurement practitioners, have not seen or heard a company yet that's making a major change like DOGE is with AI.
No, I have not seen that. And I think the core so again, politics notwithstanding, you have an opportunity with the government, or the government folks in the government are taking an opportunity to do the big bang, and they've brought in, I think it's fair to say, a heavy hitter in Elon to really make this big bang and try to get a handle on these expenses. Again, as part of an agenda. What agenda? Who knows? But I think in corporate world, change happens very slowly. It's very conservative, and even in the biggest turnarounds, that it's nothing like what we're seeing with Doge. It is incremental. It's finding the low hanging fruit, and it's as we like to say, the low hanging fruit, and it's going after the easy to do things that don't cause disruption, because really in most corporate environments the culture is risk averse, or
AKA tail spend.
yeah, exactly. Go do tail spend, go do indirects, go do this. Well, if we do anything in directs, it'll be sort of fake savings. And unless something like the trade wars or during the pandemic or some of these other big catalysts for change, the change happens pretty slowly. And even in those cases, it was solve the crisis in the moment and then kind of go back to business as usual. So to your point, I don't think anybody's doing at this scale. Now, I do think I mean, like in 2025, I have about a half a dozen companies I'm tracking that are starting their
Mhm.
journeys, but it will never. Well, let me rephrase that. I am not. I'm not seeing that it'll be the big bang like we're seeing with Doge.
It won't be the big standout. ki- I almost feel like the industry is waiting for a big player to be the leader, like somebody
Yes.
to come in, implement AI, be very public about it, talk about the change, how they've reorged their entire procurement department, and then others will follow. And I
Yep.
don't know who that's going to be, but I think that will really that anchor, I think, will really help propel change to happen faster.
Yeah, and I think we are seeing more of it in the smaller mid-tier companies. So I do see those companies embracing AI, maybe not in the way that we're talking here, but much more so than business as usual, which to me is just incrementalism. So I do think there is this element of that they are that there is it is happening at the mid tier. Maybe not. Again, definitely not like we're talking about, but definitely more than just business as usual.
Hmm. Yeah, so I almost feel like we should, if we identify someone who we think is going to be the anchor or the leader, I feel like we should on our podcast follow their journey, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
day one through a major implementation, and that would be a kind of a fun ongoing series to talk about. And it's not
Yeah.
all pretty, right? They're going to fail and there's going to be a lot of mistakes, but it would be interesting for folks to kind of listen to the process and the results, like what comes from it after they've done this major AI transformation.
Yeah. And of course, folks in the corporate world hate to fail. Like that is like there's this aversion to failure. So I think that also is why you don't see the big bang effect like you're seeing with Doge. And I think you see this is a cultural difference that Elon and is not afraid to fail. And we can maybe just leave it at that. But in Silicon Valley here, there is a culture of fail fast, which I like to say is learn quickly, because in failure you learn, and that's how humans learn. And so there's been some failures in Doge, and they lean into it. They don't run from it. They don't defend it. Again, I'm kind of dancing on the like trying not to get into the politics here, but just empirically, if you just take a step back, like they're not running from the mistakes that they find, or that they create.
So we'll have to do what in a month or so, a follow up on cost savings, right? I mean, no, there's no denying cost savings is a major focus and priority this year for procurement and finance org. So I'll be curious to see impact on cost savings for the government as a result of this.
Yeah. Now, sort of building on that theme. So this is not a failure per se, but for those that do spend analysis, and we've all done it in some way, shape, or form over the years, you always find those ahas, those gotchas that are just like, oh my God, can you believe this company is spending that much on X, whatever X is? And Jason has a few that are highlighted in from USAID, like uh, 45 million for DEI scholarships in Burma and 2 million in pottery classes in Morocco. And like, and those may be good, bad, and different, but what you learn in as doing spend analysis, oftentimes those have legitimate, like on the face they look crazy and like, what are we doing? And then but over time, often those become footnotes on page 4 or in the appendix, or they get filtered out because, and I'll just talk about it from a consulting point of view. You have a team, you have juniors that do all the analysis, and they'll find things like that, and then they'll surface them. And again, I'm not saying this is true of the ones that are highlighted. It's just the process is the young folks, they analyze this stuff, they bring them forward, and then the partners and principals study them, they ask questions, they follow up with the stakeholders, they come to find out that there is a very legitimate reason or a not legitimate reason, but more often than not, it's usually legitimate reasons for whatever it is. And then that just gets footnoted somewhere, and we move on. Although again, you're seeing a little bit of this play out in real time, is like, okay, all of a sudden we've got a very a wild statistic or amount spent on something that we suspect is X or Y or Z, and it might be, but also, like, when you do this enough, you start to temper, because oftentimes there are good explanations.
Well, and in that example you just gave, I feel like AI replaces the junior entry level
Hmm.
work,
Hmm.
and then it elevates the data to the human to come in and provide some reasoning and assessment, whether that's direct to AI to do more research, more classification, more digging, or go have some conversations. But AI kind of is that base mid layer in that story.
Yeah, 100%. Now, all of this sort of, and so as I was prepping for this, I think this highlights, or like like with any good sort of sourcing slash procurement reimagining or transformation, you start at the spend and you figure out, oh my God, we're wasting all this money, or we could optimize it, all that. We do all that, and then we start to get our suppliers in line. But then we start to look at what is it and how is it we're doing procurement. And I think one of the elements that's starting to come about, and I'm just quoting from another article here, is that or paraphrasing, I should say, that the onboarding process can take up to 18 months to get a new supplier into the system. The average is 18 months, and that's to get folks access to the government portals. And everybody knows how I feel about procurement portals. That's to the government procurement portals. So what happens is so by default, big companies tend to win contracts over and over, because the burden to get into the system and to deal with compliance and all of this stuff is basically falls to big it just favors big companies that are well ensconced or entrenched in the bureaucracy. And and so ultimately you get the same ideas, the same approaches at a premium price, and you lose innovation. And especially if all the paperwork and regulatory reviews happen for months and months and months. And to your point about AI, like, a lot of this stuff, this whole archaic process can be streamlined with AI. I fully believe, not just for the government, but also for big companies as well. And yeah, so I mean, I mean, just as an example, imagine bidding on AI for the government. Like you and I build an AI agent, we go pitch it to the government. It takes us 18 months to
Yeah.
get
I
on
mean, we
board.
might be, if we're a startup, we might be well out of business by then, or have completely pivoted.
Exactly. Or the technology might not even exist. Can you imagine if we had a procure to pay platform and we started the procurement process with the government 18 months ago? By the time we got till now, that technology might be irrelevant, or probably a bad example, but like the technology, it just might be totally irrelevant by the time we get onboarded. So I do think, and again, building on a point, like at some point we have to streamline how we procure, and I think there's a great opportunity with the federal government here in the US, but also I think most corporations have a smaller version, but still one is equally as inefficient as this.
Where my mind also goes when you talk about I don't know if treacherous is the right word, but the very long, inefficient process for getting a supplier a contract executed and then getting them actually actioned or live is because of the rules and regulations and some of the things involved. You also lose a lot of the innovative suppliers, right?
Right. Like,
So
how
they
can you
don't,
get them in?
yeah.
Yeah.
So they don't have the right they can't meet the insurance requirements, they don't have whatever some of the check boxes are, so you immediately downsize your creativity innovation pool because of that, which typically leans more towards the larger legacy suppliers.
Exactly.
So I think
So
AI will bring to the forefront more smaller, newer, innovative, more creative suppliers because you can potentially go to market a lot quicker and it won't be so cumbersome to work with those suppliers.
right, and that's the goal ultimately, is to get to that level of like part of procurement's remit is to find those new and innovative suppliers and bring them into the fold. And I think by and large, we haven't done a good enough job of that. And certainly AI will help with that. And we've seen plenty of procure tech folks starting that process, but I think there's a lot more to go.
Well, as we said beginning of the year, AI is a common theme. It's going to come up
Yes.
probably in most of our podcasts. So I love this topic. When you text me, I said absolutely procurement AI in full effect.
Yeah, exactly. And what I would, not only is AI a common theme, but I would also add another theme to that is every person is a procurement person in their personal lives, whether they realize it or not. And so part of my advocacy this year is to really talk about how procurement is something all of us deal with in our personal lives in different ways. But so I think again, DOGE is bringing this right front and center to really be that to help us understand that not only do we procure as individuals and families, but also as countries and federal governments or state
Mhm.
governments even.
All righty, is that a wrap?
That's a wrap. I'm sure there's going to be a lot more on this topic as the year goes by, but I think it's good to start this conversation, and I'll be curious if we get any reactions. And we'll link the two articles, one to Jason's LinkedIn post and to the
Yeah.
other article I was referencing, because I think this is really worth watching for all of us as professionals in procurement.
Alrighty, we will be back next Wednesday. And if you're not following us on YouTube or one of the channels, feel free to hit the subscribe button and give us feedback. Drop us a note or let us know if there's any topics you'd like for us to discuss.